Some content or topics discussed could trigger a past anxiety or be sensitive or disturbing to listen to or view. Please view and listen with caution. Hi, my name is Todd Bly-Levin. I'm one of the hosts of the Walking Tall podcast, and it's our mission to help all people that are down and depressed or dealing with some sort of trauma or mental health issue to learn how to stand back up and walk tall again in their lives. Please follow us on all of our social platforms, our YouTube channel, and check out our Walking Tall movement at www.walkingtallmovement.com. Now, here's our show.
Welcome back once again to Walking Tall. And if you were with us last week, we were so honored to be able to spend time with the most amazing Mrs. Lori Zapula and hearing her story of breaking her neck and all of the physical challenges she had to overcome, but certainly the mental health issues as well. You certainly were able to relate on many levels, Todd. Hearing Lori's story and getting to meet her, getting to know her offline, what has that done for you? And what were some of your takeaways last week?
Well, I think, number one, an incredible story of perseverance and adversity, and one that really, when you listen to her talk, you can just feel the love. And she's just so articulate and just very professional. So it was really, really an amazing woman, person, someone of strength to talk to. I think the one thing that really sticks in my mind is when she made the comment about how, here's a woman that was totally active, right? Doing all these cool things, getting ready to go to college. We've all been there. And then she has this horrible tragedy, and the aftermath of now she has to look at people as they look at her now. And that difference that, of course, she would love to just be running and walking like everybody else, like how she used to, right? But now she has to deal with these people that are judging her because of her disability. And she wrote a book on it. And I think it was just such an empowering testimony of strength and perseverance and where she is today. So I'm just a true fan of hers. And if you didn't see the show, again, you got to go back and watch it and listen to it, because it was really, really cool.
Yeah. And Dr. LaRosa, you've mentioned over time, in various instances, your experiences of working with some of your past participants in your programs, and also experiencing those looks and those eyes that people give you. And over time, we hope that it is lessening and that the acceptance of all people is heightening, if you will. But I know you were certainly able to relate with Lori, and hearing her story impacted you on many levels. So what were your takeaways?
Well, we often talk about people having to reframe their lives and sort of take a path that's in a totally different direction from what they had planned. And isn't this just the epitome of that thought process? Oftentimes when we talk to people, they impact me for several days later, and I just cannot get their stories out of my mind. My heart is just attached to their story. And Lori is for sure one of those people, just like every single other person that we have spoken to thus far. And what I felt from her was extraordinary strength. When you're that young and your life changes that rapidly, and you have to reframe, you have to walk tall, and you have to just fight and persevere. That's exactly what she did. And the mental strength that it takes, I'm not even talking about the physical strength and the physical pain that she must have endured, but the mental strength to be able to do what she has done is astonishing to me. And I have nothing but respect and absolute regard for her. And, when I think about the looks and the stares for anyone in our society that's different, it's always bothered me. It's always angered me. I'm a true advocate at heart. And I just want to point my finger at those people and say, get some grace about you, would you, but, and I've done those things before, I have to say, but
that's the New York in you.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Yeah.
No, but when, I think about my children, and I think about how they were raised around others, children with disabilities, and it makes such a difference. Makes such, my little Vito was 10 months of age when I first brought him to my my nonprofit. He was there volunteering. He willingly wanted to come. He doesn't see people as different, less than, better than, less abled, more abled. He truly doesn't. And he sees all people through such an innocent eye. You know, Anthony is so shy about his interactions with people, but it's just the same for him because they were taught early on and exposed to a variety of different people early on, and just taught that this is just a different version of a person that God chose to make. Same,
That's
you
right.
know, we're humans, we have souls, we have hearts, we all love, and we're all loved.
Yeah.
So it's a
Awesome.
message, it's a message I think that it needs to be shouted loud and clear, you know, more so in our society, so that we don't raise people that are there to judge and eyeball others that look and seem different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And, it is so inspiring for me, not only to hear stories like Lori's and, the other guests we've had to date, but, hearing how, Dr. LaRosa, both your sons, Anthony and Vito, and Todd, you often talk about Gracie and the acceptance of, all humanity. And I'm confident that, through avenues like Walking Tall or raising our children properly, as time goes on, the acceptance will only greaten, and we'll get to a point in society where all people are not looked at differently or thought to be different just based on physical abilities or mental health issues. And that's really what we're striving to do as a group, is destigmatize those thoughts and those looks and all of the things that come with them from a mental health perspective. And it's just been such an honor so far to be able to do that with the both of you. And speaking of honors, Dr. LaRosa, you've provided me an honor of getting to know one of your colleagues that you've done some just amazing work with. And, in learning more about Jill Winter, as I've gotten to know her offline, she also shared with me just an amazing story about her own son and his struggles and those mental health hurdles the experience provided. So I'm just so excited for our listeners and for the three of us to be able to spend some time here with Miss Jill Winter. And she's worked exclusively throughout her career in the hospital and healthcare industry. She earned a Master of Healthcare Administration and a Master of Arts focused in Human Resources Management, Services, Organizational Behavior from Washington University over in St. Louis. She currently serves as the Chief Development Officer for RenViva, where she focuses on work with nephrologists. And I had to educate myself. And for those of you that don't know, those are kidney doctors. But it was during her time serving as the Chief Development Officer at Helping Hands Family, where she and Dr. LaRosa became close through their work to help those with autism. And as I said earlier, it was during our initial conversation where I learned of the amazing story of her son, Gatlin, and the complications, both physically and mentally, that triggered for her and her family. I also got to know that Jill, like Todd, relies very heavily on her faith. And I'm just so honored to have her a part of our movement, and can't welcome her into the room soon enough. So Todd, if you don't mind, let her on in.
Yes, sir. Here we go.
Ding dong. Yes.
There it is. Ding dong.
Ding dong. There's the bell. Hi, Jill. How are you? Welcome to Walking Tall. And you'll have to wait for this show to air, but I hope I did you justice in introducing you and all your accreditations and accomplishments and passions. But as I did tell listeners, getting to know you and all the amazing work you've done with Dr. LaRosa, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. But what was most inspiring to me on many levels was hearing the story of your son and, how that came to be, and, your faith in how that was going to come out, and all of his strength in many ways as well. So please welcome to our show. And if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and Gatlin's story.
Thank you. My name's Jill Winter, and I'm originally from Streator, Illinois, one of 8 children. So rural Illinois, poor kid from Illinois. And I married my husband in undergrad, and I applied for graduate school at Washington University. It was a very competitive program. Only 30 were allowed in, and I was accepted. So my husband, who was a 2A head football coach, JV, mind you, okay, applied for a 5A head coaching position in St. Louis. And he says, we're not moving to St. Louis unless I have a job, So that was the only job available. He lands the job. So miracle, that was a huge miracle from the beginning. So we were notified and I accepted the position. Then we found out that I was pregnant. And we still didn't have income. We moved to St. Louis. He was going to start getting paid in September. So we had to go back to rural Illinois to get the ultrasound done on our child. And it was August 7th. And they had a wonderful color Doppler in rural Illinois. And we leave there. Like I said, I wanted 8. It shouldn't have, it's my mom had kids. It was not a big deal. So I get a phone call from my mother, and my mother says, "Oh, Jill, have you gotten your OB?" And I'm like, my mother is not that loving, doting, that much attention, And I say, "Mom, why? Why are you worried? I'm in the middle. I'm just starting graduate school. I'm under a lot of stress. What are you talking about?" And she says to me, "Oh, just wondering. I figured you should be able, you should probably get one. The ultrasound tech went to your father and said that they might find a heart murmur." And I'm a geek and I kind of know things. And I'm like, "Mom, 1 out of every 10 people have a heart murmur. This isn't that big of a deal." "Oh, I know that. So you might want to get this done." And so anyway, September 14th, just because we're switching insurances, I was able to get another ultrasound. If we had not, I would not have been able to do this. But I go in, I think it's a normal ultrasound. I think, it's not that big of a deal. I don't bring my husband. I get there and I'm at WashU and they're doing the ultrasound. And I said to the gentleman, I said, "I'm here to get the baby's heart checked out." And he goes, "Oh, no, I didn't realize that." So he moved me onto a color Doppler and they look at it. Everybody gets quiet. You're talking about everybody rushes into the room. Nobody's talking, and then they lead me into this little room and the cardiologist comes to tell me and all I see is a piece of paper that's kind of pushed over to my side, and you see the heart and the word Norwood and the word heart transplant. And I'm just shocked. Yeah, it just complete shocked. I have no idea. I'm completely floored. Dr. Angela Sharkey looks at me and she goes, "I thought you knew. They told me that you knew you were here." And I said, "No, I was told it was a heart murmur." And so the only thing I'm looking at on a piece of paper is heart transplant. That's it. So what's amazing about this is that ultrasound tech was so adamant about it that the radiologist overruled it because I didn't have any of the risk factors. There's 5 of them. I didn't have any of them. And so they said to the tech at the time, everything's fine. He was so adamant. He could have lost his job. He went to my father just to tell me to go get this checked out. He had never seen one in his career. So that's the other thing. So he had never seen this before. So this is hypoplastic left ventricle. It's very common now, but not, back in 1995, it wasn't so. And so this is how amazing it was. Out of 70 couples with this diagnosis at WashU, only 3 of us knew in utero, only 3. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So we left there. First of all, I called. Well, Todd was on the football field, so my husband's a head football coach. So I knew I couldn't get a hold of him, so I called my grandpa. And my grandpa talked me through, and I go into problem solving mode. That I'm very much of a control freak. I admit it. Okay, so I left there and I went over to meet Dr. Boxerman, my little Jewish professor, stat professor, and you're talking about people you need to come into your life at right times. That was one of them for me because he is not an emotional connector. This is a shout out for Dr. Boxerman. Like I said, he's a stat guy, and he actually consoled me in the best way he knew how. And we just started talking math. And we started talking about what's the likelihood and the probability and what was going on and what I was going through, because I was already like, hey, I'm going to drop out of this class. I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to have to do in order to make it to the end. And I want everybody to realize that sometimes people are communicating with you the best way they know how to cope. And so it wasn't that emotional, hugs, everything, but he took the stats and that helped me. It kind of brought me down and it got my out of that emotional state and got me into the problem solving aspect of it. So like I said, shout out for Dr. Boxman. So I went from there and I went back to my OB, Dr. Clone Alcaraz, and, shared with him, he knew what my diagnosis was. And then they offered me an abortion. They actually said, that's one of your options. And I said, I really, I didn't choose that because of the biggest thing is I wanted it to be God's choice and not my choice. And I wanted to be a mother, and I wanted to be, I felt I need to advocate for my child, and whatever was at that point, I didn't want me to be the reason, and that he knew that I was going to fight for him no matter what. And that if, I didn't have him after a week, that's okay, because I got to be a mother for a week then. So, you learn to love your child, whatever state they're in and whatever process you're in. So they were very good, and they brought me in October 14th into the NICU, and they wanted me to meet other parents with hypoplastic left ventricles. And there was 3 babies, actually. One was born that day. It passed the day that I came. And then the second baby, I did not get to meet the parents. The little girl's name was Macy, and she passed 2 days after I was there. And then there was the third little girl, and her name was Shelby Coffer. And I walk in, and Shelby is hooked up to everything you can think of. You see lines going everywhere. And I walk in, and Steve and Cheryl are the mom and dad, and they're like, come on in, come hold Shelby, and I'm like, okay, they just don't know what's really going on. They're in denial. That's what I got, and I'm like patting Shelby on the bottom, but there was no way I was going to pick her up. I'm like, I am not getting this child sick, and they were so positive. And I kept thinking, what's wrong with them? They have a child that might die at any moment, and they had joy. And, it was really neat because they gave me what I needed to get to the end result. So they were telling me, get as big as you can. The larger the baby, the bigger the heart, Gatlin can take. And so they were giving me all the facts that they had already researched that kind of, catapulted me a little bit further than a lot of other mothers at that time. And so I left there, and we lived in a little apartment, and right next to our apartment was our parish church, and it was St. Jude. And first of all, I have to say, I got this, I'm like, St. Jude, who is honoring Judas of Iscariot? Seriously, I was like, and Father Joe told me, he said, St. Jude is Jesus's first cousin. He's the patron saint of lost causes, especially for children. And there's only a paragraph written about him. He went to Persia, and he saved a Persian prince. And so Father Joe told me all about him and says, Jill, you have to come to St. Jude Novena this week. And I'm like, sure, Father Joe, So I did go, and I lit a candle for Shelby, and I lit a candle for Gatlin. And on Wednesday that week, they had to do an emergency procedure, and it's called the Rashkin procedure. And in between the atrium, there's a fovea that they keep open. Newborns they're born with it open, and then it slowly closed. This is a way they can keep breathing. And on Wednesday, they did the Rashkin's procedure for Shelby, because these children only make it to maximum 12 weeks, and then they just pass on. So it was Wednesday, and they went to go do the Rashkin's procedure. Shelby died on the table. They actually had to cut her open. they massaged her heart and they were able to bring her back to life. So on Friday, I saw Steve and Cheryl, and I described how the room was before I came in. Now this time it is dark. They don't have the lights on. When you walk into a room when there's no hope, and they really just had all hope was lost. And I thought, darn it, I'm going to make sure, that I bring that to them. So I told them all about St. Jude. I told them all about Father Joe. And I want to express this is when you pray to a saint, it's not like praying. We know that is not Jesus. We know that's not God. It is just like asking your aunt or uncle to pray for you. Okay. So I don't want to, confuse anybody on that. So on a Friday, I tell them all about St. Jude. I had an angel nightlight for Shelby. I had an angel pillow for her, and I had the St. Jude prayer card. And Steve and Cheryl weren't even Catholic at the time, so so here's this person bringing in all this, And at 6 o'clock, Steve walks me out of the St. Louis Children. So, and like I said, she wasn't doing well. She was at the point where she was going to expire. And so it's at 6 o'clock at night. He walks me out. He walks into the chapel and he says a St. Jude prayer card. And 9 o'clock that night, she gets an offer. This is after 8 weeks of waiting, no offers, nothing. She gets an offer at 9 o'clock. The next day she transplants. It's on St. Jude's feast day, October 28th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
That's amazing.
So complete miracle. I know it, and I have to tell you, I ran to Dr. Boxerman. So I told him, I said, they do 18 a year. It's 500-mile radius. I'm writing down, this is what my N is. This is giving him all the stats. And he looks at me and goes, Jill, shut up. And I said, what? He goes, it's a miracle and let it be. But I have to tell you, I'm very much a stat person. You have to prove it to me, And so it was just kind of funny because he just cut me mid-sentence and said, it's a miracle, just let it be. And I have to tell you that Steve and Cheryl became my emotional support. I think whenever you go through something, you need somebody there that can give you that advice, that has gone through it, that has gone through the roller coaster and knows what you're talking about. So find that person. They were great. Other things that, so if Shelby would have passed away that week, I knew what my realistic viewpoint. I mean, 3 children within 1 week, and all of them, or 2 weeks, all of them expire, and not one of them make it with this diagnosis. So, and they weren't all to heart transplant. They were just diagnosed. So these, so November 14th, the grandfather I called on the day of my diagnosis has a stroke and dies. So I'm pregnant. They won't let me on the plane. I've asked to see if I can fly to go to his funeral. I'm not allowed to go to his funeral. So I was born on his birthday. His name was Bill. Mine was Jill. He was not the best father, but he was an awesome grandfather. So redemption is always there. And he was perfect for me. And so like I said, he ended up passing. Then on December 14th, they said, oh, my due date was December 8th. And they said, oh, you're already prolonged here. Would you like to go ahead and induce? So I shoot for my mother's birthday. We missed it. But December 14th, he's born at 11 o'clock at night. And so the next day I go to the NICU and I find out there's 2 other babies waiting for hearts. And they're all the same blood type. They had never had 3 babies waiting for hearts, and they never had 3 all the same blood type. And here's the part that I emotionally, I completely lost it, is I found out Gatlin was O negative. So I didn't know if we could take an O positive heart. And I just went from here to down here, and I just kept going, you know, it's like, because everything's going through your head. And I have to say, I never did pray for heart, never at all, because I knew a mother had to lose something so precious in order for my child to live. So there's a huge guilt that you constantly go through, because you never wish that on anyone. So we had 3 waiting, and of course my stat brain kicks in, and I have the professor in front, or actually it was Dr. Cantor, who was the cardiologist, and he's on the spectrum somewhere. We love him. He's on the spectrum. And so I asked him bluntly, and I said, you know, what's our probability? And he said, it's not great. He goes, one of you guys probably would, probability wise, will not make it. So in January, so these children only make it to 12 weeks. After that, like I said, they expire. Usually somewhere between 8 to 12 is like you're pushing the limit. And this is January. There is another procedure that they could do. It's called the Norwood. At that time, it's a lot better, and a lot of children are using Norwood now. But back then in 1996, it was only 18% chance to make it to the age of 5. So we went with the belief, and you had to decide that within 1 week of them being born. We ended up deciding heart transplant, because once you had the transplant, the child had an 85% chance, you know, to make it to the age of 5. And they got to play sports. They got to do everything like every other child. And so that's why we did pick the transplant over the Norwood. I said, I'd rather know that I was a mother for 3 months than a week. So, so that was our rationale at the time. We all 3 were waiting. We had not heard anything. And at the end of January, Kirsten and Allison were the 2 little girls ahead of us. Kirsten ended up getting a heart transplant first, and that was on a Thursday in January. It was a car crash out of Dallas, and they ended up having a donor, and she did very well. And then amazing is that Allison got a transplant the next day out of Dallas in another car crash. So that happened, in that they've never had back-to-back heart transplants ever, you know, at that, and this was 1996. So at that point we became number 1, and that's when actually stress hit me. That was where emotionally, before that, I had no control. I mean, Father Joe actually kind of drilled it into my head. Remember, I told you I was a control freak. So it was very hard for me I didn't have a running aspect. I didn't have any way to solve the problem for Gatlin. There was nothing I could do except eat pizza. I will tell you, I was eating large pizzas by myself. Okay, so just to try to gain as much weight as possible. Yeah. I mean, I was up to Gatlin. I was okay. I went to one ultrasound, and just Tech thought she was being really sweet and cute, and she's like, "Oh, your baby's only going to be 6 pounds," and I'm like, bawling, you know, I'm like, I'm not eating enough, you know.
Yeah.
Went back, and like I said, I was eating Papa John's large pepperonis by myself. He was born at 9 pounds, 3.5 ounces.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but that was the only part that I ever had like a sense of control, you know, and I would read about it in the library, you know, I knew all my stats, but that was everything else I had to learn to turn over to God. And that was something you know, being at the age of 24, I never did that. I never did. I never, you know, I always thought I knew better. Like, thanks God, thanks for helping me out on that. But, you know, I can do this on my own. I have that grit, you know, and that was hard. That was very, very hard, because there's nothing I could do that would change whatever outcome it was. And so when we became, you know, top of the list, that was the stress, because then you knew it could happen any day, and you didn't know what the outcome would be either. So Gatlin got to 9 weeks, and he wasn't doing well. He wasn't. He had, at this point, he had done amazingly where he had been intubated. And that was a rarity. And he was at the point where his gases were coming back real bad. And this was, my parents had not been in since he was born. They came in for a weekend. And that Saturday morning, his gases were poor. And on Sunday afternoon, they were good. And they said, but if they're poor again, we're going to have to intubate them and we're going to have to do the Rashkin procedure. And I have to tell you, I was so terrified of this Rashkin procedure because Shelby died on the table. They did it for Allison, no benefit at all. And Kirsten, they ended up having to crack open her chest too. So it was a situation where I did not see any great outcomes every time so my prayer was always, Lord, if you're going to send us a heart, can you send it before this Rashkin procedure? Because that's how much this procedure terrified me. And Sunday, they're telling me that they're going to have to do the Rashkin's procedure. And I said, well, at midnight, they're going to do the labs. And they said, well, if they're poor, we're going to intubate them. And I said, can you do me a favor? If they're poor and you're going to intubate them, I want to come in. I want to hold them. I want to be there protecting him, you know, just know that I'm there. And because it's going to be a procedure on him and I want to be comforted. And they said, we understand. We will call you if they're poor. We will not call you if they're not. So I'm up playing boggle with my parents. You know, Todd has to work the next day. Todd is had already gone to bed. And so we're up playing boggle and I get the phone call and I am bawling. I mean, bawling because I know I'm going in because he has to be intubated. And it was actually 1:30. They called me. And I kept thinking they're kind of late, you know, and I pick up the phone and they say, we know why you think we're calling, but we're really calling to tell you we have a heart. And yeah, so I put the phone down and I wake Todd and, wake him up. Hey, we're going in. And then you put the phone down, but then you just lose it because, another mother is crying her eyes out. And you're supposed to be joyous because you're getting a heart. So you go from this really high extreme to a huge low because somebody else is suffering, during your joy. Yeah. So that was tough. That has been really tough. So we've tried to do everything to honor the child. And so we've always told our son that he has an angel's heart. And what's amazing about that is he loves Marvel. He's always, superheroes are the best. And he would tell everybody he was a superhero because he had an angel's heart. And his younger brother would get so upset because of how does he get an angel's heart and he doesn't, So, and then first grade, the first grade teacher actually came to us and said, you're going to have to tell him the truth. And then we're like, no, we don't. No. We told him, because he was telling all the other kids, well, I'm a superhero.
And Jill, that's just like so amazing to hear. And, just to fast forward real quick, and then we'll, Todd and Vanetta, I want to hear your thoughts, but just real quick, Gatlin's doing amazing things right now. So just really quick, tell us a little bit about, what he's doing and what his life's become.
So the one thing I would tell you is any mother, any parent who's had a child with needs, you become a helicopter mom. You kind of watch everything. He rejected twice, but we really wanted to give him as much normalcy as possible. So he played basketball. Now I will tell you, I mentioned my husband is a head football coach, right? So I kept him out of football. We go to the 7th grade cardiology meeting and Gatlin goes, can I play football? And cardiology, sure, no problem. And I'm like, oh, wait, ask mom first, So he played football in high school. He did awesome. He did awesome. He did great. And he has been one that has always wanted to give back. And he believes that he's here for a reason and that God saved his life for a reason. So early age, he's always decided he wanted to be a policeman. He has been adamant about it. He is now a sheriff here at Forsyth County. And I could not be prouder. He's just amazing young man. And I think he has honored his donor heart exceptionally, and I think he honors the Lord every day. I really do. We are so blessed. And that's what I was going to say. Everybody has miracles going on in their life. Actually, real quickly is, that grandfather that I mentioned to you, that passed?
Sure.
The night of his transplant, my mom was with me, and my husband and my dad went down to the cafeteria, and we're in the NICU, and my mom's in the rocking chair, and I'm holding Gatlin, and the nurse says before she leaves, she goes, "Well, go ahead and say your goodbyes." And I'm like, okay, that's a weird statement to tell a mother.
Yeah.
So, but I'm holding Gatlin, and I've never had this feeling before in my life. But I had somebody just wrap their arms around me, and it was a pure hug from my head to my toes. I didn't say a word. It was just an amazing feeling, and I could feel like I knew it was my grandfather. And my mom, who's sitting in the chair, doesn't say anything. She looks up, she goes, "You're gonna think I'm weird." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Your grandfather's here." I said, "I know." And it was just amazing. I mean, it truly, I do know in my heart that he was there at that time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we all catch our breath. Dr.
Unbelievable.
LaRosa, I'll let you catch yours a little bit longer, but Todd, just knowing you the way I do and being a man of faith as you are, and a dad, and I've heard in your voice and hearing stories that we've heard on Walking Call before with folks like Amir and those types of things. I can't imagine what you're feeling on all levels. So yeah, let us in your brain a little bit if you don't mind.
Oh boy. First of all, Jill, I'm so thankful, proud, honored to hear your story of perseverance. Another one that is just so heart-wrenching and inspiring. Your will to fight and to become the fact finder that you were, the helicopter mom, and just the raw sense of you're going to do whatever you can because this is your child and this is a part of you, and he's actually an extension of your entire family, right? And your the cross paths that you've encountered with God, and the moments the technician that he made sure was so adamant and made sure he was looking out for you because there was a purpose, the OB, the doctors, the Steve and his wife and Shelby's parents and their joy that uplifted you to help you, kind of invigorate you to keep fighting, and the stories, and obviously your compassion and the sadness for those that lost their lives, that fell. The honor that you guys want to bestow into Gatlin, and he's born like a superhero because that's what he is. And now today he's wearing a badge, which is a shield of honor, and he is a superhero. And so he's lived out his fulfillment as a child. He became this superhero, and now he's helping others every single day and sacrificing his needs and his mental health and everything to help others in their need and time. Truly inspiring. And I just think that God has such an amazing presence. And when you tell the story of your grandpa Bill with his wings wrapping himself around you, I could feel that. I mean, it's I know what you're feeling and what you felt, and it's just so that was such an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. And I think it helps so many, not just with children that are in that unfortunate place where a transplant is required, but anything really where your child is in need or has mental health issues or just trauma in their life or depression. The fight that you just described, that you put forward, and your husband and your whole family for your child, that's where we all need to be. So thank you for sharing that. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, I saw you lose your breath a few times, Todd, and as we were learning of Jill's faith, I saw you like, yeah, that's where I'm at. It was just really cool to just see that connection. And obviously, Dr. LaRosa, I know you and Jill have different types of connections on various levels, but being a mom is probably the most important connection each of you have to each other. And I know how much you love both Vito and Anthony. And I know now how much Jill loves Gatlin and Garrison and these types of things. And I saw the tears coming down your cheeks as you were hearing this story. So how are you doing? And, where was your mind going as you were hearing this story?
Well, to know Jill is to love Jill. So,
Yes.
hearing, the pain and the difficulty of that experience. Sorry.
Okay.
No, it resonates with me on so many levels. I believe as I followed your story, and I knew your story, I didn't know all the details. But as I'm following that story with you, it's so evident that God was there with you. And, it's your openness and your insight and your belief that enabled you to see God's presence and to accept it. So it's truly a miracle story. And I've heard about, Gatlin and his adult accomplishments as well. And he sure does sound like a superhero.
Yeah. Well, and Jill, and hearing
Yeah.
your story, many things stuck out to me, obviously being a dad myself and putting myself in your shoes. I just don't know how I would feel or how I would persevere. My daughter broke her arm a few years ago, and she had to be sedated while they reset it. And I thought I was going to just lose it, just seeing her in that kind of hypnotized state or whatever you want to call it. It was just so discomforting. So I can't imagine how you were feeling. But, from my perspective, the thing that stuck out as well was, as Todd said, the presence of your grandfather. I've said several times on Walking Tall, this past December, my grandmother, Josephine, passed away. And my daughter, who broke her arm, is also named Josephine after her. And, after her passing, there were many instances of which I won't get into where I could certainly have felt her presence and her lifting me up. And essentially, without her passing, I can't say that Walking Tall would have ever been a part of our lives. And, that's just a great outcome, I think, to my grandmother's story and her testament for the love we had for each other is just, hearing about your grandfather just really hit home with me. So thank you for sharing, what you just did. But I also know that, you and Dr. LaRosa, while being mothers and, having children and things of that sort, also have a passion for doing work, and you've done work together. And so, Jill, I know you at one point were working with Helping Hands and got to know Dr. LaRosa. So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about how that came to be, the work you two did together. Dr. LaRosa, if you're able to catch your breath, please chime in at any time. Todd and I are just going to sit back and enjoy the conversation, and we'll interject accordingly. But
Hey,
Todd, you want to say something?
Yeah, one thing really quick.
Sure.
I think before Jill and Dr. LaRosa start palling up and telling some fun stories, especially on how they're helping all kinds of amazing people in this world, I think one thing that I'd love to just shed a little bit of light on is I think watching Dr. LaRosa and your emotions, your raw emotions, I mean, it's truly heartfelt. And I don't think, in our society, we try to suppress that a lot. Like when we see someone automatically start to become emotional or saddened by a story, we want to instantly fix, and we want to instantly be like, oh, no, it's okay. Like, just, and Chris, I commend you because your ability, this is a heartfelt show, and your ability to be able to catch that allowed Dr. LaRosa to kind of catch her breath, but we're not telling her to suppress. And I think I just want to shed some light on that, because I think it's really amazing. It's beautiful that we're sharing our emotions, and it's okay. And Jill, you brought some light to that we need to be able to share our emotions. We need to share our stories to let people know that they're not alone. So thank you for being so raw. And Chris, thank you for just really interjecting at the right time in a really soft, professional way that I think doesn't say, be quiet or go in the corner and cry, and don't let anybody see anything, because I think it's just awesome. So thank you. I just wanted to bring it out. And you two ladies can go ahead and pal around.
Yeah,
hear
have
some
at it. Todd,
stories.
thank you for those kind words.
Oh, yeah, and I was going to add to you, Todd. You know, I mentioned that my husband was a head football coach, and he was very stoic. And then I have to say, when Gatlin came around, you know, he wasn't really kiss on or anything. That boy got more kisses than I've ever seen. And both of my Garrison's wife says, I've never, you know, seen a man who kisses so much. And then when it comes to Gatlin, it's the same thing. And his girlfriend has said, wow, you know, and I have to tell you, we do this thing, it's called Family Hug, and we all, you know, get together. We've done this ever since they were little. And but my husband wasn't the touchy-feely. He was, suck it up buttercup, and, you know, always, you know, kept it back. And I will tell you, Gatlin bent him where he he doesn't think twice about, we say love you at least 10 times a day. I mean, it's weird, but, you know, like every text, everything we do is there's a love you.
That's us.
And yeah.
Like, I think, Dr. LaRosa's husband, if he didn't know our intentions, would wonder about us. Cause I think I tell Vanetta I love her pretty much every conversation, and Todd and I, tell each other we love each other all the time. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's really true. And it's so funny. This morning I told my daughter, Josephine, I love you so much. And she said, yes, Dad. And I said, well, how do you know? And she said, you tell me every day. Well, all right, I'm doing my job.
That's what,
Well, Jill and Dr. LaRosa, please, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about how you got to know each other at Helping Hands, some of the amazing work you've done for those that you've worked with autism, and so on and so forth. So please have at it.
Well, the one thing I would tell you, I think we have very similar passions, and it's children. And, we would say this amongst each other. Our common is we want to leave a legacy. And we're at the point in our careers that we want to see what we can do to affect the world in a positive way. And that's how our kindred spirits came together, and we started working together. And I have to tell you, going back to God puts the right people in your world at the time you need it. You just have to get your eyes open. And this is how amazing. So I had one nephew that was diagnosed with autism. I meet Vanetta and my other sister, who has a child that was kind of a little bit off. The more we kept talking, Vanetta actually helped us, where Jackson ended up being diagnosed with autism. And he was diagnosed on the spectrum. He is going into first grade, and he is now grade equivalent. I mean, so it's so amazing you just have to intervene early. Speech picks up a lot. There was definitely teachers were thinking that he might have been, especially they handed him a blue pumpkin where they didn't tell Lori or myself, so they were thinking that he might have been, but it wasn't until Vanetta, and Vanetta has been amazing. She is one that gives and gives, and she was the first. I remember I'm the stat person, and when you look at the autism world, my husband is actually a special ed teacher too, and so I've seen it over the years. And with ABA, education has been it is a learning disability that autism is, and that they view it that way, and they give emotional support, and they kind of work at it from just giving more the emotional side. Now, in the last several years, healthcare is coming into this world. So healthcare is very driven, and that's my area, is more driven on stats and how do we fix it, and what neurological things that might be off that can be corrected to kind of address it. So it's a really interesting world right now in the world of autism, because you have these two industries coming together and figuring out what's the best way to address, and help the children, so they can actually do well and succeed in their lives. And that's where I think is pretty amazing is Vanetta was ahead of her game because she already had a PhD in neurology and was already looking at the brain before anybody else was. So I just sit there and listen to Vanetta all the time on, because I'll say, well, what about this? And she goes, oh, here's this study. Or, oh, by the way, did you know about this? No, I didn't, Vanetta. Tell me.
That's kind of like me and Todd.
Yeah.
No.
And that feeling is so mutual. Honestly, when I met Jill, she was like a beam of light and happiness. And then when we started talking, the intellect comes out. And so many times I've been left in complete awe by her business approach, the way that she understands the corporate world, all the things that I really didn't have that much experience with. As Jill said, I was just a pure children's PhD, whatever you want to call me. I was there to help each and every child that I met, to mentor the staff that I was training to do the very same thing, and to be a good employer on a small scale. And when my company was purchased and I had to enter into the corporate world, I really did not know how to navigate myself properly. And so Jill was my mentor in so many ways in helping me to learn really the ins and outs of the pure business approach and how to turn my data, my head, my very child-centered perspective, and turn it into information that people from a business side could really appreciate and understand. So I had to just take everything I was doing and learn how to kind of repackage it and sort of present it to people in a whole different way. Whereas the things that I didn't think mattered, I found a way to connect to my students and my clients' growth, and I found a way to make them matter. And once I was able to make that fusion, I was able to go forward with helping the company grow and succeed and hire more wonderful people and do the good things that it's doing. But if not for Jill, I really don't know if I could have bridged that gap. And I told you in the introduction, and she'll hear this later, how we went to a conference where I've known these people in this field forever, 20 plus years. I know everyone there, but Jill comes in her very first time and she's working the conference like no one's business. She's invited to all these tables for dinner, and I'm trying to find her to say, do you want to have lunch? She's like, oh, I'm over here with my, she's with all the, the big wigs and the hot shots and, everyone around. And the ability to network and the ability to connect is so inborn in you, Jill. It's something that I really believe comes from your true heart. You open up and you want to know everyone's story, and you are so transparent and you have no problem letting people know who you are. That is such a beautiful thing. And it's a thing that we talk about so much on Walking Tall, that the world needs to be more transparent and show our imperfections, because we are not all perfect. And if we all put the stories out there that we want people to know, then people going through trouble are going to feel isolated and alone, because they're going to feel as if they're the only ones who are suffering. We all suffer. It's the human condition, and it's what God wants us to experience. Let us know we're human, and also that he is there for us. And we have similar faiths as well. We're both Catholic. We both love to talk about our saints. And
I do my rosary daily. Yes.
So funny. Well, you said something, Jill, too. You said, timing is everything, or God puts people in your life at certain times for certain reasons. And, I know you've listened to both Todd's and my story, and I feel the same way, right? If on July 7th, for whatever reason, Todd didn't take a leap of faith and text me to see how I was doing after being in my incident, and Todd reaching out, I don't know where I would be personally. Certainly Walking Tall wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have gotten to know Dr. LaRosa and had the privilege of meeting you. So Todd, kind of hearing a little bit about how the two, both Jill and Dr. LaRosa got to meet, and hearing, their passions. How are you feeling? I know some of that has to resonate with you for sure.
Yeah, I'm almost like just speechless on just the amazement of connection, right? And here's people that are opening up and telling our stories, our most horrific stories, after Route 91, when I got back, I got a call. I've told this before, and a man told me his story, and it instantly made me feel connected, and I wasn't alone. And it let me kind of look forward and what that next 72 hours of my tragedy was going to look like. And that helped me, give me strength. Jill, your story, you met someone and they gave you kind of a short-term visual of what your life was going to look like.
Yeah.
And Vanetta, you've been in that situation as well. And, whether it was with your parents or your own circumstance that will launch to the world here shortly. And Chris too. So I just think that the empowerment, the connection, just say yes when you're called upon, and share your stories of vulnerability, and don't be afraid. Just don't be afraid. We're all so tough on the outside. We suppress, we try to fight all this stuff on the inside. And you know what? Your neighbor could be going through the same thing, but you're so afraid to just open up and say, yeah, I've got an issue, because I don't want someone to think that I'm an idiot or that I'm weak, or that, oh, did you talk to Todd? Like, is he okay? When I launched a video after Route 91, sharing my emotions and my feelings, I was like your husband, Jill, Todd, both Todds, by the way. So that's just an amazing name in itself. But when I launched this video and I shared my raw emotions, and I was so just open with how I was feeling, people were calling my wife and saying, is Todd okay? Like, what is he doing? Why is he talking like that? Why is he saying these things and like making himself look weak? Well, we all are weak, right? And we build strength through community. And for me, I build my strength through this. I love this. I'm deeply connected. I feel that Jesus has got his arm on me all the time, and I'm walking side by side. And I'm now, it's my job as a human being and put on this earth to try to get people to be together. And that's what we're doing. And Chris, your ambition, like, hey, you want to do a speaking engagement at ABCA, and let's talk to coaches and where it led. And then Vanetta, like you and I shared some really cool stuff, like just leap of faith. And I'm going to trust this person I've never met before, but I have an idea. And then the connection between all three of us. And now we're sitting here crying and listening to Jill, and then the inspiration. So it's just truly amazing. Yeah. It really is. So awesome.
You want to leave a legacy. You want, and you're here to change the world, and that's what we're all supposed to be doing.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I think to a degree,
where it's going. We don't know where it's going, but we don't know why we've been called to do it, but we do it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to emphasize a little bit. It doesn't mean that we share this, we've survived it, but it doesn't mean that we're perfect by any means on anything. And that we've had our doubts, we had our struggles. It's not that, hey, it's not like a movie where the hero, has this stoic image all the way through. Oh, we all had our moments. And I just want everybody to know it's okay to have your moments, and you'll be in those moments. And then the one thing I just remember, when Gatlin, when he rolled over in the hospital, he was just a couple months old, and he rolled over, and I was so excited. I'm like, and so I call my mom, I let her know, and she's like, Jill, are you okay? And I'm like, what do you mean I'm okay? He rolled over. And she goes, do you understand that? No, Mom, I completely understand that, he might pass at any moment, but let me enjoy that moment of joy. So my advice is, even in the midst of the pain that you're going through right now, find your joy. It might be a rollover. It might be something simple that you woke up that day, or you went for a walk, you took a shower, it's something that gave you a little bit of joy. Take it in, and just do it one day at a time. Don't feel like you're going to have to take on the whole world. Just, that's what I would say. Just,
so beautifully said. I think, it's just so hard, I think, from even where I sit at times, going through what I'm going through, you put on this facade, and, you try to, as Todd was saying, you know, people were reaching back out to his wife or what's wrong with Todd? And you don't want to be that all the time. And it's hard in society, you know, where people think you're trying for attention or whatever the case may be, when you're just trying to be vulnerable and you're trying to really show your strength, no different than you've done today, Jill. So I can't thank you enough. And, you know, talking through what you were just saying and listening to what, you know, you had to say, you know, taking in those moments is exactly walking tall, right? It's exactly what we're trying to instill upon anybody that listens to us and the world for that matter. And, you know, I know, as you kind of mentioned, you and Dr. LaRosa have known each other for a while now, but hearing, you know, that the fact that she's kind of involved with both Todd and I and walking tall and as you're learning this concept and getting to know both Todd and I, like, I would love to hear your expert opinion about walking tall now and you know, what about what we're trying to do kind of hits home for you and, you know, some of the excitement you may have for Dr. LaRosa and joining both Todd and I.
I think this is what the world needs today. I really do. I think you're doing awesome. And so I'm going to do the sign off, if that's okay with you.
Well, yeah, no, well, before we do, I just, you know, before we sign off.
I didn't know if that was the hint to do that.
No, I really do want to hear your thoughts. You know, you've mentioned to you know, you've heard both Todd's and my story now, and I'm sure you've heard other episodes. You made mention, you heard, you know, the gripping story of Natalie Douglas and her adoption with Ellis and these things.
Oh yeah, what I think today, what this is, it's wonderful. It's chicken soup for the soul, but in today's society, and that's podcasts, and it's ways to share your story, trust and transparency. Make sure you're not alone out there. You have ways of coping skills. That is something we don't teach in school, and it should be a class. You know, that this is your coping skills on how to deal with life and all the different emotionals. So this is the way to do it because we don't have that structure out there right now.
Yeah.
And may I add that, you know, that feeling of hug from Grandpa Bill, that is what Jill has done for me so many times when I was down and out or something was bothering me or I wasn't getting something quite right or there was something hanging over my head. Jill was right there, not only with the stats and with the information that is honestly, I should pay her for a consultation and the business end of things. But
don't give her any ideas. Don't give her any
no, it's okay. I'm a nerd and I just admit it. There's God's gift.
and but on the emotional side of things as well, what your Grandpa Bill has made you feel, you have made me feel. So thank you for that. And I do feel that God brings special people into your life when you need them. And you know, I just wish we lived closer so that we can hang out more.
And Todd, you please, you know, before I wrap up, you know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Jill, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it's amazing, your testimony of faith. We went into, you know, a lot of faith type topics today, which I really enjoyed. But you know, your message of not being alone, you know, we all fight. We fight daily. I struggle with PTSD every day. There's not something that, you know, doesn't come in my mind from my experience. And it's stories like this. It's community. It's knowing that I have my rocks, I call them, with Chris and Dr. LaRosa and others that I honestly feel like I can call when I'm down and I'm not alone. And I think that's the biggest part, right? Is not trying to get rid of the silence, understand that we all are going to have silence in our trauma. And like you said, try to understand where you're at in that silent moment and grab a hold of that positive, making your bed, that positive call, that walk, whatever you have, and just amplify the heck out of it and be so proud of yourself because you're not alone. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm now a fan, you know, I want to like look your husband up more. I want to come up and I want to shake his hand one day and give your son Gatlin a big old hug.
Football season, if you would like to come.
We're in. Well, and I just want to say too, Jill, you know, as Dr. LaRosa and Todd have both said, you know, we all need special people in our lives. And I've been so fortunate to have Dr. LaRosa and Todd in mine and now you. But what I also want to say is, hearing the impact you've had on Dr. LaRosa's life, I also want to say thank you for doing what you've done for her, because she's a huge part of our team. And Todd and I are so fortunate. Todd and I are so fortunate to have her on our side and as a member of this movement, and kind of going along this journey with us. So thank you for all the education you've provided her. Thank you for all the hugs you've given her. And thanks for spending your time with us today and sharing your story. So now is the time where before we sign off, we always allow our guests to lead us in 2 special words. And I think you know what they are. So if you don't mind, the floor is yours.
So I want to give a shout out for the Oklahoma Sooners softball girls. And there's an absolutely awesome interview this week from them. So, so I'm going to use what they use is eyes up. So walking tall.
Walk tall, eyes up.
Yeah.
Walk tall, eyes
Walk
up.
tall, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Walk tall.
Walk tall, everybody. We'd like to thank our sponsor, The Balance Project. Check them out at www.thebalance-project.org. Thank you so much for being a proud supporter of the Walking Tall movement.